3 hours ago, I'd felt like a hero, extending kindness when she needed it most. Now, standing frozen in my office doorway, I understood how thoroughly I'd been played. My private files lay scattered across my desk. My laptop screen glowed with an email sent to our entire executive board from the intern's account, with the subject line, Senior Vice President caught embezzling funds. Attached were altered versions of my confidential reports, twisted to make it appear I'd been siphoning company money for years. The very reports I'd spent months meticulously creating to prove our CEO, Grant, was the actual criminal. My phone vibrated violently in my pocket. 17 missed calls, 29 text messages, all variations of, "What have you done?" and "Security is looking for you." The intern, Thalia, was nowhere to be seen. Neither was her baby. Just the lingering scent of baby powder mixed with expensive perfume I recognized but couldn't place. I stumbled to my desk, legs trembling as I scrolled through the fabricated evidence. They'd used my own documentation against me, altering just enough details to transform me from whistleblower to criminal. Years of financial expertise turned against me with surgical precision. The office phone rang, making me jump. I answered automatically. Margot. Grant's voice slithered through the line, honeyed with false concern. Security is on their way up. I'd suggest not making a scene. This is insane, I whispered, throat constricting. You know I didn't do this. What I know, he said, dropping all pretense, is that you should have minded your own business. Did you really think I wouldn't notice you digging? You're good, Margot, but not that good. That intern is exactly where she belongs. Unlike you. His chuckle felt like nails on my skin. By the way, she mentioned how eagerly you gave her access to everything. So trusting. The line went dead as the elevator down the hall dinged. Heavy footsteps approached. I grabbed my personal phone and purse, leaving everything else behind. The back stairwell would lead to the parking garage. I'd figure out my next move from there. As I pushed through the door, I caught sight of Thalia stepping out of Grant's private elevator across the lobby. She no longer looked harried or desperate. Her posture was confident, regal even, no baby carrier in sight. She turned slightly, her face catching the light. Recognition slammed into me like a physical blow. The woman wasn't some random intern. I'd seen her face once before, in the background of a photo on Grant's desk. His wife's younger sister. The pieces clicked together with nauseating clarity as security rounded the corner. I slipped into the stairwell, my world crumbling with each step down. I had just been systematically destroyed by a woman who never needed my help at all. Before I continue this story, I want to thank you for listening. If you're feeling the rage and betrayal building inside you like I did that day, please hit that like button. Drop a comment with what you think is coming next. Believe me, you won't see it coming. And subscribe to make sure you don't miss how this ends. Trust me when I say revenge is a dish best served with unexpected ingredients. My name is Margot Winters, and until that rainy Tuesday afternoon, I was Senior Vice President of Finance at Skyward Investments. I'd spent 15 years climbing the corporate ladder, breaking glass ceilings along the way. I was known for my unflinching integrity and analytical mind. The financial world respects numbers because they don't lie, and I respected them too. I grew up in a small town where my mother cleaned hotel rooms and my father drove trucks. They taught me that hard work and honesty would take me places. And they did. Scholarship to university. Internships that became job offers. Promotions earned through sleepless nights and brilliant financial strategies. When I joined Skyward, I was the only woman in senior leadership. The men in their identical suits with their identical haircuts watched me like hawks, waiting for me to fail. I never gave them the satisfaction. Then Grant Ackerman became CEO, charismatic, brilliant, ambitious. He valued my insight when others dismissed it. For the first time, I felt truly respected. When he asked me to dinner to discuss a project, I told myself it was purely professional. 5 dinners later, we crossed a line I'd promised myself I never would. Our affair lasted 7 months before I discovered the wedding photo tucked in his desk drawer during a late-night work session. He'd never worn a ring, never mentioned a wife. The betrayal burned through me, but I kept it professional when I ended things. The company needed my expertise, and I refused to let a personal mistake derail my career. Grant accepted my decision with surprising grace. We developed a new normal. Colleagues, nothing more. I buried myself in work, determined to prove my value extended far beyond whatever had passed between us. That's when I noticed the discrepancies. Small at first. Reporting irregularities. Investments that appeared profitable on paper but showed concerning patterns when analyzed deeply. As SVP of Finance, it was my job to investigate. What I found sent ice through my veins. Grant was systematically inflating company performance while quietly selling his own shares. Classic securities fraud, but executed with exceptional skill. If it continued, thousands of investors would lose everything while he walked away wealthy. I compiled evidence meticulously, planning to present it to the board once it was irrefutable. I told no one. Trust had become a luxury I couldn't afford. Then came the rainy day when Thalia appeared in our lobby, struggling with a baby and stack of files, spinning a heartbreaking tale about a canceled daycare and a critical deadline. The perfect damsel in distress, targeting the one executive who'd been a struggling single mother herself early in her career. My own daughter Zoe was in college now, but I remembered those days vividly. The impossible juggling act, the judgment from colleagues, the fear of asking for help. So I gave Thalia my keys, my trust, and access to everything she needed to destroy me. By midnight, my company keycard no longer worked. My email was deactivated. The security team had escorted me out like a criminal while staff watched wide-eyed. Grant stood in his office doorway, his expression a masterclass in disappointed concern. I drove home in a daze, windshield wipers beating a rhythm that matched my racing heart. My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. "You should have stayed in your lane." I pulled over, hands shaking too badly to drive. Rain hammered against my car as I finally allowed myself to break down. 15 years of building my reputation, gone in 3 hours. When the tears subsided, something else took their place. A cold, clear resolve. They had underestimated me in the most profound way possible. They thought I would slink away, reputation shattered, unable to fight back. They didn't realize they'd just declared war on a woman with nothing left to lose. The next morning brought reporters to my doorstep. The story had broken overnight. Trusted executive caught embezzling funds. Heroic intern discovers evidence. CEO expresses profound disappointment in trusted colleague. I closed my blinds and declined to comment. Instead, I called my attorney, Olivia, who listened silently to my story. "They've constructed this perfectly," she finally said. "Your electronic signature is on documents you claim are forged. The evidence was found on your computer, in your office, which you willingly gave someone else access to, and your history with Grant, which no one knew about," I interrupted. "Except now everyone does. Thalia apparently mentioned to HR that you'd hinted at a past relationship during your conversation, combined with the embezzlement allegations. I look like a scorned lover taking revenge and money." I finished, bile rising in my throat. "Exactly, it's your word against theirs, and they control all the evidence." I hung up feeling hollow. They had choreographed my downfall with chilling precision. That night, I received an email from my bank. Account frozen pending investigation. My credit cards followed. By morning, I couldn't even buy coffee. 3 days later, I was served with papers. Skyward was suing me for damages. The same day, my landlord called. Reporters had been bothering other tenants. Perhaps it would be best if I found other accommodations when my lease ended next month. I sat on my kitchen floor, back against the refrigerator, and laughed until tears streamed down my face. They weren't just content to fire me, they wanted to erase me. My daughter Zoe called from university, voice tight with concern. "Mom, there are articles about you online. People are asking me questions. Don't engage," I told her, keeping my voice steady despite the knife twisting in my chest. "This is a misunderstanding that will be cleared up. Is it true? What they're saying?" The question hung between us. My own daughter, doubting me. "No," I said firmly. "I've never stolen a penny in my life. You know who raised you." Her hesitation before responding told me everything. The damage was spreading like poison. That night, I couldn't sleep. Instead, I spread financial reports across my living room floor, searching for something, anything, I might have missed. Some piece of evidence they couldn't have altered or hidden. Dawn was breaking when my phone pinged with a news alert. Skyward Investments promotes whistleblower intern to junior executive. The article included a photo of Thalia beside Grant at a press conference, both smiling brilliantly. Her baby was nowhere in sight. The caption identified her as Thalia Reed, recent finance graduate and sister-in-law to CEO Grant Ackerman. Sister-in-law, the final piece clicked into place. I stared at their smiling faces until my vision blurred. This wasn't just about silencing a whistleblower. This was personal. A carefully orchestrated takedown by a man who couldn't risk exposure and a woman willing to play any role to climb the corporate ladder. As the sun rose fully, casting long shadows across my scattered papers, I made myself a promise. They thought they'd written the end of my story. They were about to discover it was merely the beginning. 6 weeks after being fired, I found myself in a cramped studio apartment on the edge of town. My elegant condo had been traded for a place where the shower leaked and neighbors argued through paper-thin walls. The security deposit had consumed the last of my accessible savings. I sat cross-legged on a secondhand mattress, laptop balanced on my knees, scrolling through job rejections. 23 so far. It turned out having suspected embezzler attached to your name made you unemployable in finance, even when the charges were never filed. Grant had been too clever for that. Criminal charges would require evidence that could be challenged in court. Character assassination required only whispers. My phone rang, displaying Zoe's number. My daughter had called daily at first, then weekly. Her voice had grown increasingly distant with each conversation. "Hi, sweetheart," I answered, trying to sound upbeat. "Mom." Her voice was tight. "I need to talk to you about tuition." My stomach dropped. "What about it?" The university called. "This semester's payment is overdue." I closed my eyes. The tuition money had been in one of my frozen accounts. "I'll figure it out," I promised. "Don't worry. That's what you said last time." Her frustration bled through. "My roommate saw an article about you online. People are asking questions." "Zoe, did you do it, Mom? Just tell me the truth." The question sliced through me. "No," I whispered. "I've told you that." Silence stretched between us. "I have to go," she finally said. "I have class." After we hung up, I hurled my phone across the room. It bounced off the wall, leaving a small dent in the plaster. One more thing I couldn't afford to fix. That night, I lay awake staring at water stains on the ceiling. I'd hit bottom. No job, dwindling resources, my own daughter doubting me. Grant and Thalia had won. The realization settled over me like a shroud. Then, something strange happened. As I acknowledged complete defeat, a peculiar calm washed over me. When you've lost everything, you also lose the fear of losing. I rose before dawn, made instant coffee, and began to plan. First, I needed income. With financial firms closed to me, I had to think laterally. I created a simple resume under my maiden name, Margot Levine, removing all references to Skyward. By noon, I'd applied to 10 small businesses needing bookkeepers. 3 days later, I was hired at a family-owned restaurant. The pay was barely above minimum wage, but it was cash in hand. I worked nights, leaving my days free for more important pursuits. Because while I was serving plates of pasta and balancing the restaurant's books, I was also hunting, not just for evidence to clear my name, but for justice. I started with public records, scouring financial disclosures Skyward had filed. I created a timeline of Grant's activities, cross-referencing them with stock prices and his known trades. Patterns emerged, but nothing concrete enough to prove fraud. I needed an insider. After 2 weeks of deliberation, I called Naomi, my former assistant. We met at a coffee shop 20 miles from the city, where no one would recognize either of us. "You shouldn't be here," were her first words as she slid into the booth opposite me. "Yet here you are," I replied. She looked thinner, her eyes darting nervously around the cafe. "They watch everything. After you left, they installed new security software, every email, every search. Tell me about Thalia." Naomi's mouth tightened. "Youngest executive in company history. Has her own team now, moved into your old office. And Grant, they're inseparable, always in closed-door meetings. The rumor mill is active. I nodded. Not surprising. His wife? Clueless, apparently. Or in denial. Naomi hesitated. There's something else. The quarterly reports? The numbers don't make sense. But nobody questions them. Because nobody wants to end up like me. Exactly. She glanced at her watch. I need to go. As she stood, I touched her wrist. Why did you come today, Naomi? Her eyes met mine. Because I checked the numbers myself. You weren't lying. She slid a flash drive across the table. I could lose everything for this. I already have, I reminded her. The drive contained internal projections, board presentations, and emails. Valuable, but still circumstantial. Grant had covered his tracks meticulously. Any accusation from me would look like the desperate flailing of a disgraced executive. I needed leverage. Something so undeniable it couldn't be dismissed. Days blurred into weeks. I worked at the restaurant, lived frugally, and built my case methodically. I created a secure email account and began reaching out to financial journalists, testing the waters with hypothetical scenarios mirroring Skyward's activities. Most ignored me. One suggested I seek psychiatric help. 3 months after my firing, Skyward announced record profits and a major expansion. The stock soared. Grant appeared on financial news programs, charming and confident. Thalia stood in the background of these interviews, her calculated gaze never far from him. That night, I saw them together in person for the first time since my downfall. The restaurant where I worked was catering a charity event. I was helping in the kitchen when Grant and Thalia swept in with a group of executives. They claimed a table in the corner, champagne flowing freely as they celebrated their success. I watched through the kitchen door as Grant rested his hand on Thalia's lower back, leaning in to whisper something that made her laugh. His wedding ring caught the light. My hands shook so badly I dropped a tray of appetizers. The crash drew attention from nearby tables. Grant glanced over, his eyes passing over me without recognition. I'd dyed my blonde hair dark brown and lost enough weight that my cheekbones stood sharp against my skin. To him, I was just another invisible service worker. You okay? Asked the head chef. I nodded, kneeling to clean the mess, keeping my head down as bitter rage coursed through me. After they left, I found a napkin at their table with Thalia's lipstick print and a note scrawled in Grant's handwriting. Penthouse, 11 p.m. Wife's in Boston until Wednesday. I pocketed it, another small piece of evidence for a case that seemed increasingly impossible to prove. That weekend, scanning financial blogs, I found a thread discussing unusual trading patterns around Skyward's recent announcements. A user named FinWatcher had mapped stock movements suggesting insider trading. Their analysis was sophisticated, pointing to exactly what I'd suspected. I created an account and messaged them privately. After weeks of careful exchanges, I learned FinWatcher was Xavier, a quantitative analyst at an investment firm. He'd been tracking Skyward out of professional curiosity. These patterns aren't accidental, he wrote, but without internal documentation, it's impossible to prove. What if I could get that documentation? I asked. Then you'd have something worth taking to regulators. But corporate servers are fortresses. What about personal devices? Easier, potentially. If someone was stupid enough to conduct business on personal accounts. I thought about the napkin, about Penthouse, 11 p.m., about arrogance and secret rendezvous. How would one access those personal accounts? I asked. Xavier's response included technical details about keyloggers and remote access tools. Illegal methods, he emphasized, that he was describing purely academically. I thanked him and deleted our conversation. The next day, I quit my job at the restaurant, withdrew my meager savings, and began surveillance on the luxury building where Grant kept his penthouse. The doorman changed shifts at 4 p.m. and 12 a.m. The night security guard took smoke breaks at regular intervals. Cleaning staff came Mondays and Thursdays. I cataloged these patterns while formulating a plan that terrified and exhilarated me. If caught, I'd face not just humiliation but criminal charges. If successful, I might find the evidence I needed. My opportunity came 3 weeks later. Through careful observation and strategic conversations with building staff, I learned Grant would be hosting a private party at his penthouse. Caterers would be coming and going throughout the evening. I spent my last $100 on a catering company uniform and fake ID badge. Heart pounding, palms sweating, I walked into the building carrying a tray of desserts, nodding confidently to the doorman. "Penthouse," I said. "Mr. Ackerman's party." He waved me toward the service elevator. Grant's penthouse occupied the top floor, all glass and gleaming surfaces showcasing panoramic city views. Staff bustled about, setting up for what appeared to be an intimate gathering. 8 place settings on a dining table. Flowers, candles, soft jazz playing from hidden speakers. I moved efficiently, placing my desserts in the kitchen where 3 caterers worked. No one questioned my presence. In service uniforms, we were functionally invisible. "Where's the restroom?" I asked a harried chef. "Through the hall, left at the artwork." I walked confidently, tray in hand, but turned right instead of left. Grant's home office door was ajar. Inside, a sleek desk held a closed laptop. Bookshelves lined one wall, a bar cart another. Photos showed Grant with his wife at various functions. None showed Thalia. I slipped inside, set down my tray, and extracted a tiny device from my pocket. My hands trembled as I plugged it into his laptop's USB port. 15 seconds to install, Xavier had said. I counted each heartbeat as the device did its work. "Looking for something?" I froze. Thalia stood in the doorway, wearing an elegant black dress, her expression unreadable. "Just delivering desserts," I said, gesturing to my tray. Got turned around. She studied me, head tilting slightly. For a horrifying moment, I thought recognition flickered in her eyes. "The kitchen is the other direction." Her voice remained neutral, but her gaze dropped to the laptop. I moved the tray, angling my body to block her view of the USB port. "Sorry, first time in this building. These penthouses all look the same to me." A smile played at her lips. "Do they? How many have you been in?" Before I could answer, voices approached. Grant's distinctive laugh echoed down the hallway. In the momentary distraction, I palmed the device, unplugging it smoothly as I shifted the tray. "I should get back," I said, moving toward the door. Thalia stepped aside, but as I passed, she whispered, "Nice hair color, Margot." Ice flooded my veins. She knew. But instead of raising an alarm, she let me walk past. The question was, why? I maintained my pace down the hallway, passing Grant and 2 men in expensive suits without making eye contact. In the kitchen, I told the head caterer I was feeling ill and needed to leave. 10 minutes later, I was blocks away, heart still pounding. The USB device clutched in my sweating palm. Had the program installed completely? And why had Thalia let me go? It took 3 anxious days before I had answers. The keylogger was functioning, sending Grant's keystrokes to a secure server. I watched as he logged into email accounts, financial platforms, messaging apps. Passwords and private conversations flowed to me like toxic gifts. What I discovered exceeded my worst suspicions. Grant wasn't just manipulating Skyward's stock for personal gain. He and Thalia were systematically looting the company through a complex scheme involving falsified contracts and offshore accounts. Millions had already been diverted. Even more disturbing were their private messages. Their relationship went beyond professional and into territory that would destroy both their careers and Grant's marriage if exposed. But most chilling were their occasional references to me. "Still worried about the M problem?" Thalia had written. "She's finished," Grant replied. "Working at some restaurant last I heard. Nobody believes a word she says. She's smarter than you give her credit for. Smart doesn't matter when nobody's listening." He was right. Even with this evidence, who would believe me? I was the disgraced executive with a vendetta. Any accusation would look like desperate revenge. I needed a plan that didn't rely on my credibility, one that would force the truth into the open through channels Grant couldn't control. That night, as I reviewed their messages, I noticed something odd. Every Tuesday, Grant forwarded specific financial documents to Thalia's personal email rather than her company account. Why the secrecy when they worked together openly? I followed the digital trail, which led to a startling discovery. Thalia wasn't just Grant's accomplice. She was his insurance policy. The documents she safeguarded would implicate him if anything went wrong, or if he ever tried to betray her. She was protecting herself, exactly as I would have done. A plan began forming, Dangerous, potentially catastrophic, but with a slim chance of success. It would require perfect timing, technical precision, and the willingness to risk everything on one final gamble. As I mapped out each step, my phone rang. An unknown number. Hello? I answered cautiously. Ms. Winters? A formal male voice. This is Detective James Carson, Financial Crimes Division. We'd like you to come in for questioning regarding some new information about Skyward Investments. My blood ran cold. Had I been discovered? Was this the end before I'd even begun? What sort of information? I managed to ask. I'm not at liberty to discuss details over the phone. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. at the downtown precinct. The line went dead. I sat motionless, possibilities racing through my mind. A trap? Legitimate investigation? Either way, I had hours, not days, to decide my next move. The digital evidence I'd gathered lay spread before me, proof of crimes far greater than what I'd initially uncovered. If I brought it to the police now, would they believe me? Or would Grant's influence bury the truth once more? Dawn found me still awake, my decision made. I would attend the meeting, but not empty-handed. I carefully selected and printed key documents, organizing them chronologically, evidence that told a story even skeptics couldn't ignore. As I sealed everything in an envelope, my phone chimed with an incoming email. The sender, Thalia Reed. The subject line made my heart stop. I know what you did. Let's talk. The message contained just an address and a time. That evening, 7 p.m. I stared at the screen, adrenaline coursing through me. Thalia knew about the keylogger, had probably known the moment I left the penthouse, yet she'd said nothing to Grant. His messages showed no awareness of being monitored, which meant Thalia had her own agenda, separate from his. I had 12 hours until the police meeting, 10 until Thalia's invitation. Somewhere in those intersecting timelines lay either my redemption or my final downfall. I picked up my phone and dialed the one person who might still be willing to help me, the one person who'd seen the real numbers and knew I was telling the truth. Naomi, I said when she answered. I need one more favor. Naomi agreed to meet me at a 24-hour diner halfway between the city and my apartment. When I arrived, she was already there, fidgeting with a paper napkin, tearing it into tiny strips. This is insane, she said as I slid into the booth. If anyone finds out I'm helping you, no one will, I assured her, though I couldn't guarantee anything anymore. I just need information. What's happening at Skyward? Any whispers about an investigation? She shook her head. Nothing official, but there's been tension. Grant and Thalia had a closed-door argument yesterday, voices raised enough that people noticed. About what? No one knows. But afterward, Grant canceled his meetings and left early. Thalia stayed late, going through files in her office. Your old office. My mind raced, connecting dots. Has she been acting differently lately? More cautious? More independent? Naomi considered this. Actually, yes. She's been making decisions without consulting Grant first. Small things, but noticeable. Last week, she vetoed one of his proposals in front of the executive team. Everyone was shocked. Interesting. The power dynamic was shifting. And the detective who contacted me? Carson from Financial Crimes? Never heard of him. She hesitated. But Margot, there's something else. The board called an emergency meeting for tomorrow afternoon. Closed door, executives only. The timing couldn't be coincidence. Any idea what it's about? No, but... She lowered her voice. Thalia's been meeting privately with board members. One by one, very discreetly. The pieces were starting to form a picture I hadn't anticipated. Thalia wasn't just Grant's accomplice. She was positioning herself for something more. One last question, I said. If someone wanted to access the main conference room's projection system remotely, how would they do it? Naomi stared at me. You're not planning something stupid, are you? I just smiled. After extracting the technical details I needed, I returned to my apartment to prepare for the morning's police interview. I selected evidence carefully, enough to be compelling without revealing how I'd obtained it. Then I tried to sleep, managing only fitful dozes between anxious planning. At 8:30 a.m., I arrived at the downtown police precinct, dressed in the most professional outfit I could still afford. A simple black dress and blazer that hung loose on my thinner frame. I gave the detective's name at reception and was directed to a small interview room. 10 minutes later, the door opened. The man who entered wasn't wearing a police uniform, but a crisp suit with an ID badge clipped to the pocket. Ms. Winters, I'm Detective Carson. Thank you for coming in. You didn't give me much choice, I replied, studying him. His demeanor was professional but not hostile. We received some interesting documentation regarding financial irregularities at Skyward Investments. He opened a folder, revealing printouts similar to what I'd gathered. These came from an anonymous source, but they reference matters you apparently raised concerns about before your departure. My pulse quickened. Someone else had sent evidence? May I? I gestured to the papers. He pushed them toward me. The documents outlined precisely the fraud I'd discovered, but with additional details I hadn't known. Offshore account numbers, transaction dates, even minutes from private meetings I hadn't been privy to. Do you recognize this information? Carson asked. Some of it. I kept my voice neutral. I identified similar patterns before I was fired, but not at this level of detail. The allegations against you. Embezzlement, wasn't it? Those charges were never filed. Because they were fabricated, I said. I was framed to discredit my discoveries about the actual fraud happening at Skyward. Carson's expression revealed nothing. That's a serious accusation. Yes, it is. One I can substantiate. I slid my own folder across the table. These documents show the actual financial manipulations taking place, primarily orchestrated by CEO Grant Ackerman and Executive Thalia Reed. He raised an eyebrow. The whistleblower who exposed your alleged crimes, the accomplice who helped frame me, I corrected. For the next hour, I walked him through the evidence, explaining the complex financial scheme, while carefully avoiding any mention of how I'd obtained my information. Carson took notes but remained frustratingly unreadable. This is compelling, he finally said, closing his notebook. But there are gaps. How did you access these records after being terminated? The question I'd been dreading. I had copies of some documents from my investigation before I was fired. Others came from concerned parties still at the company. Naomi Chen? He asked. My blood froze. I don't know what you mean. Carson sighed. Ms. Winters, we've been investigating Skyward for months. We know Ms. Chen provided you with information. She's not in trouble. In fact, she's been cooperating with us. The floor seemed to shift beneath me. Naomi is working with you? Not initially, but after she was approached by another party at Skyward, she came to us. Another party? My mind was spinning. Who? Carson checked his watch. I think that question will be answered at your 7 p.m. meeting tonight. I stared at him. You know about that? Like I said, we've been investigating for months, more thoroughly than you realize. He gathered his papers. You're not under arrest, Ms. Winters. But I strongly advise you not to leave town or take any independent actions regarding Skyward. Are you saying I should cancel tonight's meeting? He stood. I'm saying we'll be nearby. Whatever you learn, we'd appreciate hearing it afterward. As he left, I sat stunned. The police had been investigating all along. Naomi was cooperating with them. And most puzzling, who else at Skyward had approached Naomi? I left the precinct with more questions than answers, but one thing was clear. Tonight's meeting with Thalia was more important than I'd realized. I spent the afternoon preparing, mentally rehearsing scenarios. If Thalia was breaking from Grant, she might see me as either a threat or a potential ally. Either way, I needed to be ready. At 6:45 p.m., I arrived at the address she'd provided, a small upscale bar in a boutique hotel far from Skyward's offices, the kind of place where privacy was expected and honored. Thalia was already there, sitting at a corner table nursing a martini. She looked different from the desperate intern in the rain or even the polished executive at Grant's penthouse. More guarded, more calculating. You're punctual, she observed as I sat across from her. I appreciate that. What do you want, Thalia? I asked, skipping pleasantries. A server approached, but she waved them away. I think we should speak frankly, Margot. We both know you installed surveillance software on Grant's laptop, just as we both know I let you walk out of that penthouse instead of calling security. The question is why? She took a deliberate sip of her drink. I've been watching you. The restaurant job, the apartment downgrade, the hair color change. Most people would have crumbled completely after what happened to you. Yet here you are, still fighting. Is this admiration or concern? I asked coldly. Pragmatism. She set her glass down. Grant is becoming a liability. He's getting careless, taking bigger risks. The scheme we created is sustainable only with precision and discipline. He's losing both. So you're worried about getting caught. I'm worried about getting blamed. Her eyes hardened. Grant has been systematically positioning me to take the fall if things collapse. Similar to what he did with you, but more elaborate. I leaned forward. Why are you telling me this? Because I know you've gathered evidence. I know you've been contacted by the authorities. And I know that tomorrow, the board is meeting to discuss irregularities that have been brought to their attention. By whom? A smile played at her lips. By me. I couldn't mask my surprise. You're turning on Grant? I'm protecting myself. She reached into her purse and withdrew a small drive. This contains everything. The actual fraud scheme. The plan to frame you. Grant's instructions on how to approach you that day with the fake baby story. Everything. Why would you give this to me? Because tomorrow, I'm presenting a sanitized version to the board that implicates Grant while minimizing my involvement. I'll appear as the conflicted insider who eventually did the right thing. She slid the drive across the table. This version, however, shows my full participation. Insurance policy against insurance policy. I stared at the drive without touching it. You want me to withhold this from the police if they come after you. I want mutual assured destruction, Margot. You use your evidence against Grant, not me. And I'll make sure the board not only fires him, but offers you a very generous settlement to avoid a messy, wrongful termination lawsuit. You think I can be bought? After what you did to me? I think you can be practical. She finished her martini. Grant destroyed your life. I helped, yes, but I wasn't the architect. He's been doing this for years. You weren't his first victim, but I'll be his last, I said quietly. Something in my tone made her study me more carefully. What are you planning? I finally picked up the drive. Pragmatism, Thalia. Just like you. I stood. You should know the police are watching this meeting. Alarm flashed briefly across her face. You're working with them? Let's just say our interests have temporarily aligned. I pocketed the drive. Good luck with your board presentation tomorrow. Margot. Her voice stopped me as I turned to leave. We're not so different, you and I. We're both survivors. I looked back at her. The difference is, I can still recognize my reflection in the mirror. I walked out into the cool evening air, my mind racing. Thalia's unexpected move had provided the final piece I needed. With her evidence combined with mine, I could ensure Grant's downfall. But her attempt to shield herself from consequences grated against every principle I held. Back in my apartment, I examined the drive's contents. Thalia hadn't lied. It contained everything, including videos of her and Grant planning my destruction in meticulous detail. Their casual cruelty as they discussed ruining my life made my hands shake with rage. I plugged in my laptop and began working, fingers flying across the keyboard as I prepared for tomorrow. Not just for the board meeting Thalia had mentioned, but for my own countermove. By dawn, everything was ready. I called Detective Carson. I met with Thalia Reed last night. I know, he replied. My colleagues observed your meeting. She provided evidence against Grant Ackerman while trying to minimize her own involvement. I have the complete files showing her full participation. A pause. And you're willing to turn those over? Yes, but I need something in return. I need to be present at Skyward today when everything unfolds. That's not standard procedure. Nothing about this case is standard, I interrupted. I've lost everything because of them. I deserve to see justice done. After a lengthy silence, he agreed to arrange it, with conditions. I would enter with the officers, remain in the background, and not interfere. 3 hours later, I stood in the elevator of Skyward's building, flanked by Carson and 2 other plainclothes officers. My heart pounded as we ascended to the executive floor. The board meeting would be starting in 10 minutes. As we stepped out, Naomi stood waiting, her expression a mix of anxiety and resolve. Our eyes met, and she gave a slight nod. The conference room is ready, she told Carson. Everyone's arriving now. And the technical adjustments? I asked quietly. Done exactly as you requested, she confirmed. We moved toward the conference room, stopping just outside. Through the glass walls, I could see board members settling into their seats. Grant sat at the head of the table, the picture of confident authority. Thalia was setting up a presentation, her movements precise and controlled. Carson turned to me. "Remember our agreement. You observe only." I nodded, watching as Grant tapped his watch, signaling Thalia to begin. She clicked to her first slide, a financial overview that looked deliberately complicated. "Now," I whispered to Naomi. She pressed a button on her phone. Inside the conference room, the projection screen flickered, then changed, not to Thalia's carefully prepared presentation, but to a video of Grant and Thalia in his office. "The board's getting suspicious," Grant was saying. "We need to accelerate the transfers before next quarter." "And if someone notices?" Thalia asked. "We'll find another scapegoat. It worked with Margot. It'll work again." The board members froze, staring at the screen in shock. Grant lunged for the projector controls, but they were locked out. Thalia stood paralyzed, her careful plan disintegrating. As more incriminating videos played, each showing explicit details of their fraud, their affair, and their framing of me, Carson nodded to his officers. They entered the room, badges displayed. Grant Ackerman, Thalia Reed, we're with the Financial Crimes Division. We need you to come with us for questioning regarding securities fraud and corporate embezzlement. The chaos that erupted was spectacular. Board members shouting questions, Grant trying to delete files on his phone until an officer stopped him. Thalia looking directly through the glass at me, her expression shifting from shock to something like grudging respect. As they were let out, Grant finally noticed me standing in the hallway. Recognition dawned on his face, followed by disbelief, then fury. I simply watched, my expression neutral, as he was escorted past me in handcuffs. "This isn't over," he hissed. "Actually," I replied calmly, "it is." After they were gone, Carson approached me. "That video wasn't part of our evidence collection." "No," I admitted. "That was mine. Remote access to their presentation system is potentially illegal." I met his gaze steadily. "Then perhaps you should arrest me too." He studied me for a long moment, then shook his head slightly. "The board is asking to speak with you." The next hour passed in a blur. The board members, desperate to contain the scandal, offered immediate reinstatement with a promotion, back pay, and a substantial settlement for wrongful termination. I declined the position but accepted the financial compensation. My reputation would be publicly restored with a company-wide announcement and press release. As I left the building, Naomi walked me to the elevator. "What will you do now?" she asked. I smiled for what felt like the first time in months. Start over. On my terms this time. That evening, as reporters gathered outside Skyward headquarters and the story broke across financial news networks, I sat on the floor of my small apartment surrounded by printouts and drives, the evidence of my vindication. My phone rang. "Zoe." "Mom," she said when I answered, her voice thick with emotion. "I just saw the news. I'm so sorry I doubted you." "It's okay," I told her, tears filling my eyes. It looked convincing because it was designed to. "I'm coming home this weekend," she declared. "We need to celebrate, and I want to hear everything." After we hung up, I opened my laptop to check on one final piece of my revenge, one neither the police nor Thalia knew about. When I'd installed the keylogger on Grant's computer, I'd also planted another program, one that would activate at precisely 9 p.m. tonight, sending emails from Grant's personal account to every board member, major shareholder, and his wife. The emails contained every message between him and Thalia, professional and personal, every plan they'd made, every cruel comment about his wife, every detail of how they'd framed me and planned to frame others. At exactly 9 p.m., my screen showed the program executing flawlessly, hundreds of emails delivering truth directly from Grant's account, ensuring that even if legal proceedings somehow failed, his destruction in every circle that mattered to him would be complete. As a final touch, a special email went to his wife with evidence of not just Thalia, but 3 previous affairs with employees, along with detailed financial information about assets he'd hidden during their prenuptial agreement, everything her divorce attorney would need to take him for every penny. I closed my laptop, a sense of peace washing over me for the first time in months. Grant and Thalia had tried to erase me, to make me small and invisible. They'd underestimated not just my resilience, but my capacity for methodical, patient retribution. Tomorrow would bring new challenges: statements to the press, meetings with attorneys, decisions about my future. But tonight, I simply savored the knowledge that justice, Comstay, my justice, had finally been served. The woman they'd tried to destroy had risen from the ashes, not just to reclaim her life, but to ensure they lost everything they valued in theirs. I walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, phones were pinging with notifications, lives were imploding, truth was spreading like wildfire, and I, Margot Winters, was finally free. If this story of persistence and calculated revenge resonated with you, please hit that like button. I'd love to hear in the comments what you would have done in Margot's shoes. Would you have gone for revenge or just moved on? Subscribe for more stories about women who refused to be underestimated and broken by those who thought they could get away with anything. Remember, sometimes justice isn't about what happens in a courtroom. It's about making sure the truth finds its way into exactly the right hands.